How deep is too deep? How cold is too cold? And how dark is too dark? Hundreds of miles out to sea in the frigid waters of the North Atlantic, stories begin to change, facts begin to blur, and tempers begin to flare. What started out as a routine mission becomes twisted with lies and perils as three men find themselves deliberately drawn into a complex, high seas, high stakes historical tale of betrayal, revenge, greed, and murder. Clemency, the new undersea thriller by Charleston III.
Welcome to the Library Society. I'm thrilled that you're here, and I know we're going to have a great week.
And Charlie came to us through the grapevine. And I learned that he had written this magnificent book, and I had to read it, review it. And I did. And I just charged into it, and the more I learned about it, the more interested I became. And then last night, I heard some of what you'll hear this evening about the inspiration for the book. And that is going to blow you away. So let's just set the tone. It's exciting. It is a thriller. And this book certainly should become a screenplay that's a fantastic movie. It's got all the makings of it. And once you read the book, I think you'll agree. But without further ado, I would like you all to give a round of applause for my friend Charlie Turner.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you for all of you for coming. I'm Charlie Turner, my nickname is Thumper, and I want to say thank you to a couple of people before we start. Of course, Charles Waring was instrumental in getting this pulled together, and thank you for having it here. I wouldn't be here without Shay and Claude, and they're here in the front row. Shay is published by Random House. She's a wonderful writer, and she has been right with me from the beginning. Both of them have, and I couldn't have done this without them. I have my parents here, and my son Charlie is back there in the back, and I have a whole other support crew, Paul, Ollie, and Matthew. So without them, this whole thing doesn't come together. The book itself, Clemency, is, in my mind, about just that. It is set as a story about diving, scuba diving, not just pretty fish, not just warm water. I started diving myself about 15 years ago. I've logged several thousand dives. And as divers go generally one of two directions. One type of diver likes to see the pretty fish in the warm water and plans trips. And the other type of diver is the person who wants to go beyond the norm and see things that most people never see. In my case, I went to class. I took a class on diving. You spend time in the classroom, then you go for pool work. And in the pool, you demonstrate and learn all of your diving skills. And then you go somewhere to what they call open water, where you are with an instructor and you get into either the ocean or a quarry or somewhere. And you demonstrate these skills to an instructor in an open environment, and that's when you pass. In my case, I did my pool work in Northern Virginia, and I did my open water dives off the east end of Grand Cayman Island. 60 feet of water. The water was gin clear, perfectly warm and gorgeous. And so in the first dive, we all gathered together in the sand and showed our instructor that we knew what we were doing. In the second dive, we went to a place called Scuba Bowl. There were tarpon under the ledges of this place that were so big the scales were the size of playing cards. darkness. It was amazing to see that, and all the fish and pelagics and everything else. But that, after a while, I wasn't terribly interested in. I noticed that over one edge of the reef, it kind of dropped off into the dark. So I decided I want to go see what that was all about. So I just left the crew and I went right out over the edge. I turned my fin straight up toward the sky and pulled down on this lever. And the next thing you know, I'm heading straight down this fall and I'm having a blast. And my mask is being pressed against my face. And all of a sudden I feel this arm, this hand grab my fin. And I'm being pulled on. I'm like, get away from me, pulling on me. And then it's on my leg. And then it's on my jacket. And then this person has me like this and is looking me in the face. And I can see that it's a very stern look. So he drags me up to the bottom of this rope. He's looking at his watch. And there's a woman above me. And she's hanging on. He's hanging on to my jacket. And she's looking at her watch. And everybody's looking at their watch and looking at me while everybody else is getting on the boat. I was told, and we climbed on the boat some few minutes later. And of course, then they started into this discussion about why I could have been killed and what was wrong and this and that and the other. And that kind of sort of, I lost that after a while. So I decided over time that, you can look at beautiful fish. I got friends who count beautiful fish. One beautiful fish is as beautiful as the next beautiful fish, but I want to go do something else. So I started into the deeper diving, the mixed gas, the rebreathers, the things that would let me go places that none of us could ever get. And that's what this book is about. There are two things you worry about if you're a regular diver. You worry about, and that's the diver that's looking at the pretty fish. You worry about running out of air and getting the bends. Well, if you're a technical diver, you worry about three things. You worry about getting trapped, you worry about running out of air, and you worry about getting the bends. Getting trapped as a technical diver is the most severe conclusion you can meet. And so I'm going to read something to you. The story, Clemency, is about three men who go and try to salvage a wreck in the North Atlantic that is so deep, so black, and so cold that any measure of mistake is more than likely fatal. And so I want to read this first, and then we'll talk a little bit about their fate after I get through it. When the hammer was unsheathed from its hanger and raised to strike the wheel, smiles came to the eyes of those divers who in that instant forgot the cold, forgot the darkness, forgot the depth, and forgot the danger. They also forgot the razor's edge. They would never see the first tiny shards of iron creep over the threshold of the open doorway from the outside. They would never see the creeping masses increase like ants onto freshly cut fruit. They would never see the flow growing to a steady stream several feet high like muddy water flowing down a stream. They were focused on receiving their reward. Ultimately, they would awaken from their sweetest dreams to a blasting blizzard of sludge through the one door that had brought them here and was their only way out. Unfortunately, the tides of their fortune had changed. The silt, iron, rust, and dirt overtook them from behind like an angry bear. It stood up upon them and filled the open doorway to the outside, compacting to advance into this newly found void. By the time the divers realized they couldn't see one another anymore, it was too late. One diver managed to turn toward the door in a futile attempt to scramble against the torrent before the rest tried to follow. No fins, no chance. Clemency shuddered. She shuddered in a broadening cadence that culminated with the sound of complaining hinges and an explosive bang that sealed off forever the remaining light that the divers were desperately running toward. Terror down here is silent. Death is an isolated and hopeless affair. It's the one fear you ever have as a diver in what is an overhead environment. Those guys were in trouble. And on the back of this book, the first line is, "Every man is a man in trouble." Captain Heinz said those words to me in the middle of the night, one night. He's a character in this book. And when I sat down and thought about what he was saying to me, I realized that beyond diving and beyond every day, he's absolutely right. Actually, every man is a man in trouble. By that, I think he means to say that no matter who we are, whether we live in a mansion or a cardboard box, every one of us, every day, lives with some measure of strife, some measure of trouble. There's something about every one of our lives that, in some measure, makes us weak and haunts us, from the day we're born to the day we die. I think that life carries us from one defining moment to the next, and I think, in my estimation, a defining moment is the moment at which circumstance collides with human weakness. And what is the result? Well, we're changed in a way that from which we never recover. As an example, no one ever forgets, and no one is ever the same after the moment that they look into the eyes of their firstborn child. I don't care what you read. I don't care who you ask. That particular moment is a moment that is life-changing. It's a defining moment in our lives. And there are many others. Weddings, death of a loved one, whatever they are. But in between those moments, we live our lives. And what are we actually really doing between those moments? In between these defining moments, I think what we're all doing is we're all hunting for clemency. Here's what I mean. The last time I was searching for clemency, I was out on the side of the highway with the window down and the air conditioning was escaping at a rapid rate, and I was getting miserable, and I was sitting there in the blinding sunlight, and I was saying to myself, please let this man make it a 79 and a 55. Yeah. Right? Or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, I really hope that new TV set shows up on next month's feasibility. So I just need a little extra time. We all do this. Every one of us, no matter who you are, that's what happens in the natural order of our lives. And in the case with Clemency, in this book, every single one of these characters suffers a weakness and displays a weakness. And every single one of them moves through their lives and moves through the course of the book trying to better themselves and get themselves into a position where they can lessen the severity of their condition. And in the end, isn't that what we all do? There are interesting aspects to this book that I hope you all will pick up on. I think when you study also the names and the characters and their movement through the book, you'll see that there are deliberate biblical parallels. I think that to tell a good story, it has to have good bones. It has to come from a good standard truth. And that's what I'm trying to do. For my last little piece to read, I picked something that I didn't write. Somebody else wrote. But I think that in the end, it shows the reader what we all strive for, where we are all headed, and why we are all searching for clemency, just like the guys in this book. And it goes like this. It says, "Build me a son, O Lord, who will be strong enough to know when he is weak, and brave enough to face himself when he's afraid. One who will be proud and unbending in honest defeat, and humble and gentle in victory." And that was written by Douglas MacArthur. In the end, I think as we all search for clemency, and we all move from one defining moment to the next, don't we all wish those words on who's to come next? Thank you.
We'll take some questions.
I sure will. That's right.
Oh, this is mine. I want to know what you did before you wrote this book.
What I did.
What brought you to writing? Is this your first novel?
That's it.
Okay.
It is. Most of what you're going to read, well, actually, all of what you're going to read in there is true to life experience, what you're going to see. And it's interesting. Of course, I have been blessed by being able to do a lot of things that I think a lot of people, never get to do, seeing a lot of things that most people go their whole lives and never see. And I think, as a writer, it's important to take those experiences, and I think you have to establish a level of credibility through detail in your writing. Give the reader something that they can hold on to, that they can learn from and take something away from, while at the same time demonstrating a story, handing them back truth. That is part one, of course, and I'm working on the sequel now, which is not die related. But again, I'm trying to give a reader a true sense of realism, which makes it read like a movie, so that you really feel like you're taking away from the experience something new and fresh and new. I think if you look at it, there are allegorical components to it. I think you will see that. I think you'll see that in the development of the relationships between the characters and in the characters themselves. Did I deliberately seek that out? Yes, sort of.
I want you to talk a little bit about the infamous Nicole and who she was and what she did to drive this story. She's treacherous.
Nicole is an interesting character. She, in this book, is not someone who is clearly defined. Of all the characters in the book that have direction, she is a little bit treacherous. But I think that she demonstrates a little bit of a side in all of us, a little bit of a sort of a gray area. And because she is not particularly clear in her motives, clear in her objectives, she helps the other characters really define themselves. And I think that's important. What will happen is, down the road, she will become defined.
I was going to ask because I had the privilege of meeting the woman that came out thereafter. She's quite interesting. Will she be constantly in this chronicle?
She will be in the next few.
I wondered if you would give us a little teaser on the sequel.
The sequel, picks up a short period of time after this book closes, within a few months. It is based in Washington, D.C. And in it, the main character has gone back to work. And he's sort of picked up his life where it left off after having done this. And he manages to develop something that he wants to market to the military. And it is something that is, by its nature, going to devastate terrorism. And so the story, the sequel, deals with how he has to draw on the resources, all of which come from the characters that are developed in this book. He has to reassemble them to make this happen. Because as we know, if we go to ask the government for $1, they'll give us 50 cents. So if we're honest about asking for $1, and $1 is what we need, if all we get is 50 cents, then we can't do the job.
I'm fascinated by the process that authors use to write. And obviously you've been a successful businessman. I mean, you've obviously had a career before at this point you've taken to writing. And I have two questions. One, has the discipline of writing been a different kind of career challenge for you? And if not, is it because, as I'm hearing you speak, it sounds like you're not unlike J.K. Rowling, who already had all the Harry Potter books in her head. I mean, it sounds like you've already thought through all the different steps, which I just find that fascinating, that it's not necessarily a thing that evolves each book.
Well, the answer to that is that the characters themselves, I'll let you in on a secret. Clemency, in its first draft, was written in 19 consecutive days. During a window that started at 8:30 in the evening and went till 4 o'clock the next morning. Every single day, every single day, every single day, until the first draft was done. The story then, by that time, all these characters were talking. It was a constant process. During the day, they would argue with me. They would tell me, things were being changed, things were moving, characters were changing, names were being altered. And so there came a moment when I had to stop arguing and start writing. And it just was done. In terms of sequels and down the road, you're right. The characters themselves, as you'll see in the first book, it opens doors and it will leave you with questions, which is what I want to do. I want the book to be complete. You can read the book and it has a beginning and an end. But I wanted to leave behind enough questions so that you would want to know what happened to some of these people, and then as they talk me through their own growth, we all grow together. That's why, and I didn't believe when I started writing this, that you can write a perfectly polished character from the beginning, because if you do, then you have absolutely no use for them. If they're finished on the first page, then they can't help you. Every character needs to go through some level of redemption, some path. And so, as I've written this, one thing that you'll notice, there's one character in this book, and you'll see him from start to finish, and you'll see his finish. But he's very clear. As a character, he's a finished character. use for him, so he's finished. The other characters, not so much. They're not particularly finished. And the reason is because that hands us the mechanism to polish more forward. Well, I'm glad you're all here. Thank you so much. It's been